It's time for your phone calls, your questions, and your comments. It's time for the Urban Scene with Don Frierson.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the Urban Scene. Don Frierson in the host chair. So glad to have you along on today. It is a beautiful day because it's the day that God's given us. We're glad to be here, glad that you're here with us. And I hope that all of you had a great Father's Day on this past Sunday. Frank Knapp is on the telephone lines with us. We'll be going to him in just a few moments. There was a Juneteenth celebration in Charlotte, North Carolina. And you know what Juneteenth is all about. If you don't, we'll explain it later on this week. But there was a block party and 2 people were killed. And I just thought about that because when we talk about celebrating Juneteenth, it is a time of togetherness and remembrance of how far we've come. And for something like that to have happened just disgraces what the memory of Juneteenth is all about. Just wanted to get that in. But let's go to the telephones and take our guest, Mr. Frank Knapp. Hello, how are you doing?
I am fine, Don. Thank you very much. It is a beautiful day. And on the Juneteenth, I actually attended the activities at the State House this weekend. The religious leaders had their wrap-up of the week of Juneteenth and had some very inspiring prayers offered from the podium. So it was a good turnout.
You know, what's interesting to me is the first Juneteenth event I ever went to was back in 1984 or 85. It wasn't here in Columbia. It was, I can't remember where it was. But I know, I didn't really know what Juneteenth was at that time. And through Congressman Clyburn, I found out. And I was a freelance news reporter, and he suggested I go cover this Juneteenth event. And it struck me that Juneteenth has been celebrated all through the years in the African-American community, but I've never seen it get this much attention as it did this past week, which is a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. And, of course, all the controversy that's been going on regarding the people demonstrating for racial justice, helped shine a light on it. And then, of course, our esteemed president picking Juneteenth Friday to at first to do his rally in Tulsa really escalated the conversation.
Yeah, he did. But speaking of the president and the legislature and this pandemic we find ourselves in, you formerly headed the South Carolina Small Business Chamber. I think that's what it was called.
Oh no! I am still the president and CEO.
Okay.
We have not changed. We've been here since 2000 when I co-founded it, and we are still going strong today.
The reason I raised that is because when I did that brief interview with you on the Friday, I thought you had changed the name of the organization.
Oh no! Okay. So let's revisit this. So back in 2017, in late fall of 2017, I was contacted and asked to co-chair a national coalition of small businesses that were concerned about tax reform that Congress and the President were trying to enact back then. And our concern was that it was going to be one-sided, everything go to corporations. And in fact, in December of 2017, Congress passed and the President signed with joy a tax reform that cut the tax rate for corporations, not small businesses, corporations, by 40%. And it had some scraps left over for small businesses. And we've been advocating ever since that needed to be revisited because we gave away the store and caused about a $1.9 trillion deficit over 10 years just so that corporations could use that tax cut to buy back their shares of stock, and their CEOs could make a lot of money, and the wealthy of the country got a big tax cut. So we've been fighting that battle ever since 2017. What's happened, Don, is that this pandemic has really exposed some real serious problems that small businesses have with our leaders in Washington. So we did a poll beginning in June, and this was an online poll of our supporters, and over 1,200 responded. And what we found was that, by the way, that organization was called Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform, the first one in 2017. And what the poll found was there were over 80% of the respondents said they thought that the leaders in Washington favored big business, and over 80% said that they didn't even think that the leaders in Washington knew what the needs were for small businesses. And they had a lot of other concerns. And so we have transformed Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform into Small Business for America's Future. So I am co-chair of that coalition also. I'm still doing my Small Business Chamber of Commerce here in South Carolina, but I am a co-chair of that national organization. And we're looking at several different things that are the problem. First, we would like to have a more equitable way of addressing the economic problems for small businesses that the COVID-19 pandemic has created. We want to address the problem with health care costs. This is a decades-old problem, the cost of health care. And that was one of the leading, like 71% of the respondents said that was a major concern. And then we also want to look at, tax reform again, continuing the idea of tax reform. 69% thought we needed to have a more fair and equitable system for small businesses. And then the last is simply a generic term called economic security. And what we're talking about there are things like access to capital for small business. Again, these are decades-old problems, but we've not had a loud enough voice in Washington to bring it to the attention of our leaders there and start focusing them on solving the problem in a way that is beneficial for small businesses. So that's what's going on with Small Business for America's Future, launched last week. Coalition I co-chair, but I am still the president and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce.
So you couldn't do both under one umbrella. You felt there was a need to separate.
Well, I wear multiple hats all the time. So this is something else. Again, I've been doing it for this organization since 2017. It's just we changed the name and changed the focus. So the Small Business Chamber of Commerce is a supporter of Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform, and it gives us here in South Carolina a bigger voice on national issues.
We're going to the telephone calls in about 10 minutes as soon as we set this up. But before we get to where we are now, just briefly, the 2017 tax cuts, I think the corporate rate at that time was, 38% or something like that?
Yes, that's correct.
And it was reduced to
21%.
Now, that was the effective rate, but the 38%, corporations wasn't really paying 38%.
No. If you were a corporation back before December 2017 paying the 38%, you needed to fire your CPA and do some other book juggling, because the effective rate was probably in the teens, probably maybe 13, 14% that corporations were actually paying. So the big to do about we've got to be more competitive with our nation, other nations that have lower taxes on corporations. Our corporations are suffering; they're not making any money. It was all nothing but a smokescreen to lower the taxes on corporations, and they're still only paying effective tax rate of 12 to 13%.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, if the corporate rate is 21%, then what's the effective rate now?
It's probably about that same 12 or 13%. They probably probably even less than what it was before 2017. There's just too many loopholes in the tax law for corporations. Too many giveaways to them that they can reduce their tax burden. And the national debt increased dramatically after the passage of the 2017 tax reform. And that's a national debt that each of us owe, so that we could give a tax break to the biggest corporations in this country.
Yeah, but they say with that money they were going to hire people, bring money back from overseas, and then the average citizen got a tax rate, which if you lived up north, it was negated by the fact that you couldn't deduct your property taxes anymore. So
so they were supposed to what they were arguing was that you give these guys a 40% tax cut, they would turn around and invest it in new factories, and invest it in this, and they'd give all their employees bonuses and wage increases. None of that happened. None of it happened. But we knew it wasn't going to happen because they did the same thing back in the Reagan years.
But they said it wasn't going to happen because there was this famous forum where they asked the corporations who were in attendance how many were going to reinvest that money into what it was supposed to be invested for. And maybe about one or two raised their hands. They knew that was going to happen.
Well, the corporations knew what was going on, but the politicians in Washington, the Republicans in Congress, and the president kept on putting out that bogus line that, this is really going to make us grow, economy is going to grow. It did not do that, and is no better example of how it did not help the economy and did not make those corporations stronger is what happened in this pandemic. Because every one of those big corporations that got a 40% tax rate cut, they came back to Congress with their handout saying, we're losing money, we're not profitable anymore. Well, if they wouldn't have given their tax cut to give it away by buying back their stocks and giving it to their CEOs, if they would have done what they were supposed to do, they wouldn't have had the problem.
Well, they said the average citizen like me and you, we got a cut in our taxes, right?
Yeah, how much did you get?
Nothing to talk about.
They promised us $4,000 per average American family. That's what they promised us going into that tax cut in 2017. Nobody got a $4,000 tax cut as an individual or family.
Well, Frank, let's move forward to now in your new organization and where small businesses find themselves in now. First of all, there's the PPP and I think that's the acronym for.
It's Payroll Protection Program, and these were loans that were to be made to small businesses through financial institutions, through the banks, to be 2.5 times the average 2019 payroll for those businesses, and that was to help them get through the pandemic and make sure help them survive. That's what the PPP loans were about. There was one in the beginning of April and one toward the end of April. Two different ways of these things.
Now, the Treasury Department has come out and said they aren't going to reveal who those. Well, I think they backtrack a little bit, but initially they did not want to reveal who got that money. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, that was crazy. This is public taxpayer money backing these loans that were essentially going to be grants if people could figure out how to make them into totally 100% refundable. And they were arguing that, this is proprietary information and this is information the public shouldn't have. And what they were doing is trying to protect those corporations that were publicly traded and big national chains who got over 1/3 of all the PPP money as of last week. 1/3 of the money that was given out went to loans that were over $1 million. These weren't small businesses getting this money. These were big companies that had managed to gin up the system to get these loans, and that's who they were trying to protect. Now, fortunately, there was a lot of pushback from both Democrats and Republicans into Congress, and has forced Treasury to change its mind, and now they're going to give out some information for anybody who got a loan over $150,000. So they have opened up the system to make it more transparent, so that was a good thing to happen. But yeah, their initial reaction was, even though the loss, the Treasury and SBA had said that everybody who got a loan was going to be made public, then they turned around and said, no, we really don't want to do that.
So what is the status of small business now from your perspective and from your new organization's perspective, and how do you propose to at least have some impact on what you're seeing now?
So small businesses have been dramatically impacted. We've had thousands of them have gone out of business already, and a lot of that was the way the PPP loans were drawn up, the rules that were put in place by Treasury and the SBA. And by the way, our survey found that 57% of the respondents said the Trump administration's response to COVID-19 policies favored big business, and 54% disapproved of the way the Trump administration has handled this whole thing. So the situation is not good for small businesses. Those small businesses that were forced to close, that they lost money for a couple months, and they may have gotten a loan, but they got it too soon because they couldn't spend it because they had no payroll because they weren't allowed to open up. So there was a lot of problems with that. But I'm going to tell you that in our poll, what we found was that 53% of the respondents said that they had to take on new debt because of this pandemic. Almost 1/4 of them, almost 25%, said that debt was above $20,000. 18% had new debt of over $100,000. So this has really come back to really to haunt small businesses and to force a lot of them to make a decision whether they actually wanted to stay open, whether they wanted to stay in business. Now, as you know, Don, small business owners these entrepreneurs are very optimistic. They really think they can, given a fair chance, they can make it. And so we're hoping that the federal government comes up with some more money to help these small businesses. We'd like to see it in the form of a grant instead of a loan. So we continue to argue that, and we just have to watch Washington, what they're going to do. They seem to be of different opinions depending on who you talk to up there.
Help me understand something. It is the mantra that small businesses drive the economy. If that is true, why was not more emphasis placed on small business in this pandemic?
The way the PPP loans were approved by Congress and the way the rules came out from Treasury and the SBA, the Trump administration's SBA and Treasury, you would almost have to think that there wasn't anybody in those two organizations that ever ran a small business. The rules were just chaotic. And then we found out how you're supposed to make them 100% forgivable. It was like 12 pages of things that, a CPA would have to try to figure out. Well, they've changed it, and they've made it a little bit easier going forward. But that's the problem. Everything keeps on changing up there. So why did they not put more emphasis on doing something that was small business friendly? Because small businesses aren't running the show up there. By our own poll, it says 84% of small business owners don't think that Congress even understands the needs of small businesses. Who's running the show are the big corporations. That's who's running the show. They're the ones that have the big presence in Congress and have the president's ear. They're the ones that are making the big campaign contributions. This is corporate America is really running the show here, but they say that they want to help small businesses.
It is minority businesses, small businesses, from what I've read, and this may be expanded out, but because they didn't have the relationships with the banks, a lot of companies, then they really were behind the 8 ball in terms of getting these loans because the banks dealt with their customers first. And I don't even understand why they went through the banks to deliver these loans.
Well, you're absolutely right. That was one of the biggest problems, that Congress decided they were going to make them loans, and they were going to put banks and credit unions in charge of deciding what small businesses were going to have a chance to survive and which ones weren't. And, of course, the banks, they're trying to make as much money as they can because the banks made money on this. They were going to, at first, make the loans to their best small business customers. And I say small business loosely because the definition was anything less than 500 employees. So at that top range, I didn't consider them small businesses. But the banks were in charge of these loans, and so they took care of their best customers, the ones that they knew who were solvent and they already had loans with them or had big commercial accounts with them. They took care of them first. And you're right, the minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, any of these very small businesses and sole proprietors, they were out in the cold because the banks, even if they had a checking account with the banks didn't want to deal with them because the loans they were going to ask for were going to be too small.
Frank, let me put a stop right there. We need to take a break, and we'll come back with telephone calls on the urban scene.
Hi, this is Councilwoman Dahlia Myers. From Starlight to Screaming Eagle and Old McGraw to Olympia, we're improving our neighborhoods in District 10. From Elgin to Eastover, we're building better infrastructure, and using our school utilities project, we'll see reliable, affordable, high-speed internet in Hopkins, Gadsden, Eastover, and 601 by next year. From Little Camden to Percival Road, we're removing blight, funding new parks, and reviving our neighborhoods. We're District 10, and we're making the most progress. So thank you, Mallet Hill and Hickory Hill, Taylors and Polo Road. Thank you, Eastway Park, Arthurtown, Drexel Lakes, Washington Park, Eastover, Gadsden, Taylors, and Hopkins. 4 years ago, we made promises, and we've delivered. Now I need your support to keep District 10 moving forward. This Tuesday, vote Dahlia Myers for Richland County Council District 10. We're on the move. Ain't no stopping us now.
Paid for by Myers for County Council.
The Worship and Word Network.
I am personally so grateful for the Worship and Word Network. I enjoy it every day at my lunch break. Don't know how I would get through the day sometimes without that inspiring lunch hour. Keep up the good work.
If the Worship and Word Network has been a blessing to you, let us know. Call our feedback line, 803-402-3639. That's 803-402-3639. The Worship and Word Network.
Welcome back to the Urban Scene, talking small business in this pandemic with Frank Knapp with the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. And what's the name of your new organization, Frank?
The new alliance is called the Small Business for America's Future, and I encourage anybody who's an entrepreneur or a small business owner, go to smallbusinessforamericasfuture.org and sign up to get information from us. There's no cost to doing it. And the more small businesses that we can talk to and to try to let them know what's going on and to raise their voices, the more powerful the small businesses will be. So go to smallbusinessforamericasfuture.org and sign up to get the information.
Our number here is 803-733-5620, 803-733-5620, if you would like to get on the program today. By the way, before I get to you, Frank, First Nazareth Baptist Church will be distributing masks. I believe it's on the 27th, and they're going to be doing it at the church. So it's very important to wear a mask, and First Nazareth Baptist Church will be doing that on February 27th. And it's going to, everybody knows where First Nazareth Baptist Church is. Make sure you come out and get your mask. I think it's from 11 until 3. I'll check the time, but it's very important that we wear a mask in public. So, Frank, what is it? Is it the fact that you're bringing this new organization together so you have a stronger lobbying arm in Washington, D.C.?
Well, yes. I mean, so we have a stronger voice in D.C. We will never. We're not going to have the money to compete with the big corporations of this country or the big trade associations of the country. But we need to take the information we garnered from the poll and communicate that to our members of Congress that they're not doing the job. They're simply not getting the job done for what small businesses really need, and what small businesses really need is a better deal on surviving this pandemic. We need a better deal on taxes. We need a better deal on health care costs, and we need a better deal with things like access to capital. Those are the things that we need to take care of and solve those problems so that we can have more entrepreneurs out there to create small businesses, because we're at a 4-decade low in new business startups. And our Senator Tim Scott has recognized this and has introduced legislation to try to do some studying on the matter. Unfortunately, he introduced it last year and still sitting there, not going anywhere. And so we can't wait for Congress to get their act together to start studying the issue. We know what the problems are because we've asked small businesses, and they told us what the problems are.
You know, you mentioned Senator Scott. One of the things he did was proposed, and it was approved, something known as opportunity zones. And I think the way that work is some of these businesses who realize money from these huge tax cuts, they're supposed to reinvest that in the community. Is that a way to assist with small businesses? And what do you know about these opportunity zones?
So the opportunity zones passed actually in December of 2017 with the tax reform. That was a piece of it. The concept is that there would be given tax advantage for people to invest in these undeveloped areas or rural areas to help them grow their economy. And on paper, that sounds great. But it wasn't that you could go out and find something you wanted to invest in, a small business or something, in a designated opportunity zone, and we've got plenty of them around this state. In fact, you go to Bull Street Bull Street development. That's actually in an opportunity zone.
Say what?
Yeah, seriously, the Bull Street development, where we have all that, the baseball field and all that stuff. That's actually designated as a part of an opportunity zone. And the reason is that every time they drew a circle around a low economic area, an undeveloped area, they were allowed to go a couple miles outside of that and be included in the opportunity zone. But what was going on is you couldn't do that alone. You had to join others through an organization. There had to be an organization that was putting together the investors to do a project. You couldn't make that decision, but you could go find one of these organizations that were putting together a project. Well, what those projects were putting together, look, these all were people who wanted to make money. And so the way they wanted to make money was to invest in brick and mortar. They wanted to build buildings, build hotels, those types of things. And not in the middle of the very rundown area, on the periphery, on the outskirts. And there was just a recent report about this, an analysis, and they found out that most of these people so far that's taken advantage of the opportunity zones or the projects in these opportunity zones have been of that brick and mortar, let's build a resort, let's build a hotel, and it wasn't really going into the area that needed jobs and creating small businesses. It was creating construction to build something that somebody else then could make money on. And a lot of these places that were going to be built, the owners admitted we were going to build it anyways.
So then the money that has been reinvested, that's almost like tax-free money, isn't it?
Well, it is. It basically is if you had a stock that you wanted to sell, you would take, instead of paying the capital gains on that stock, you would take you would take all that money and you would invest it in one of these opportunity zone projects. And if you held your money there for 10 years, you could then sell it and pay no taxes. That was the concept. Fortunately, people like Congressman Clyburn does have proposals of changing that, of making the projects that are considered projects in the opportunity zone that can take advantage of these tax breaks, make them into something that actually creates jobs.
Well, I guess they would argue that over on Bull Street, they're supplying plenty of construction jobs, but the problem is after the job is finished, then what next?
Well, and where do those construction workers come from? They're all, if they have specialists, if they're specialty workers, they're not coming from that area that needs jobs. They're coming from outside. But Bull Street's a good example. Bull Street was going to be developed regardless of these tax incentives.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, I go back to a question I posed earlier, because it makes absolutely no sense to me. If small businesses are the driver of the economy, then why is it that they come out at the lower end of the totem pole through legislation like these opportunity zones, the PPP, because this economy is never going to move forward if small businesses aren't there.
Well, you're absolutely right. So back to my statement about we're at a 4-decade low in new small business startups. Every economist, even in the people in the Trump's administration, will tell you job growth really comes from small businesses, not big business, but small business. The statistics are very clear. All the net new jobs are created by businesses that are less than 4 years old and have less than 4 or less employees. That's where the new job growth comes from, and we're at a 4-decade low in that. So they talk a good game. Everybody wants to talk a good game, but when push comes to shove, it's always the people who are there lobbying day in and day out, and they have the personal relationships with members of Congress and the president, and they have their hand out, and they want it to be arranged so they can make the most money for the people they represent. And unfortunately, that's not small businesses. We just don't have that type of clout in Washington. Now, the big businesses like the U.S. Chamber they'll always say, oh, we're doing this to help small businesses. Anytime you hear a big corporation or a big organization is representing big business, and they say they're doing it for small business, run and hide because they're not telling the truth. They just want the public to think this is good for small business.
Do you have an alliance with the Chamber of Commerce?
Which one? There's a bunch of them.
Well, the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce.
No, they're a 30-plus organization and year organization, and they've been around for a long time. But we know each other, but no, we do not work together.
The Europeans, what they did in this pandemic, didn't the government actually pay for small businesses to keep their employees on the payroll? Before you answer that, though, let me go to the telephones. Hello, you're on the air. Hello? All right, well, maybe they'll call back. But didn't they pay small businesses? Didn't they pay the employees of these businesses?
So a lot of European countries years ago had made the decision that the way they were going to address, situations like this, very bad economic downturns, is that they were not going to pay unemployment to the individuals. They were going to pay the business community to continue to employ those employees, to essentially keeping them there on the job, even though if they may not have been working. And they literally, as you said, that those governments of those nations would pay the businesses maybe 80% of the payroll to keep their employees on the payroll. And that's turned out to be a very good system. And we, of course, never did that. I don't know if our Congress ever even entertained the idea to do that. But the Europeans, those countries that did it, were a step ahead of us. And there's a lot of people who realize now that what's happened in this pandemic with the massive unemployment that we have, and people, trying to get their unemployment through their state agencies, really doesn't work very well because people couldn't get their check. They were delayed a long time, and some people probably still haven't gotten a unemployment check from the federal government. That's $600 a week. And so it's simply inefficient. It causes a lot of problems. It severs the tie between the worker and their employer, so that when things come back, those employees may not have a job when they come back. We have a very bad system when it comes to unemployment in these very hard recession times.
Sometimes it just seems as if the average person out here doesn't have a chance. And when you look at Florida, which is really experiencing a rise in COVID-19 cases, the former governor, Rick Scott, who was the richest man in Congress, when he was governor, deliberately made it first of all, he cut unemployment insurance. And then he made it so deliberately hard to get it that it was almost impossible for anybody applying for insurance to get it. And so when this came about, people in Florida who filed for unemployment I mean, they said they were going to straighten out the system. I don't even know if they had or not. And these people keep getting elected back to office. Now these same people who are having problems getting unemployment insurance because of him, they elected him to Congress.
Well, I'm not sure that the people who are in trouble with unemployment got elected him.
Well, that's true too, but I might be overgeneralization.
The majority of people aren't unemployed or they've not necessarily suffered economically because of the crisis. A lot of workers have. Obviously, how many millions, tens of millions, have filed for unemployment. But as you know, Don, we got a problem in this country when it comes to democracy. The people who should be going out and have a real vested interest in their economic security, a lot of them stay at home when it comes to election time. I've always maintained that if the workers of this country, of all economic levels, voted, that we would have different policies in this country.
So where are small businesses now as we speak? What is the shape of small business in this country?
Well, again, this pandemic has really shined light on the problems that small businesses have. A lot of these problems that we are identified in this poll, they've been around for decades, literally decades. But Congress and the president just hasn't been able to resolve them. Now, when we talk about the cost of health insurance, President Obama did. He fought hard, got the Affordable Care Act passed. That really was a big help in getting more people with health insurance, and the uninsured, when they go get some health insurance, somebody's paying for it, and it's usually the people with health insurance. So that puts a upward pressure on premiums. So that was a good thing. Affordable Care Act was a good thing, and I got to tell you, when we have 71% of the small businesses saying lowering health care costs is a top priority. They are tired of this employer-based health insurance, where most people go get their health insurance through their employer. That system doesn't work. Look at what's happened in this pandemic. All those tens of millions of people who are unemployed and filing up for unemployment insurance and unemployment benefits, they don't have health insurance anymore. Where they had it once, maybe with their employer, they don't have it anymore, and it's just clear. And this is when they need it. They would need good health insurance with this pandemic, but it just shows that the employer-based health insurance program does not work. It's a broken system. We need a better one. We've always advocated from the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce that we ought to expand the Affordable Care Act. We ought to have a good public option, a vibrant one that's kind of mirrors Medicare. Let people go into it. Let's raise the level of income that people can get subsidized, get the premium assistance from the federal government, and let's give people the choices that they're looking for, but let's make it more affordable. Federal government can do that, and it's crazy that we don't. We're the only industrialized country that doesn't do something that really drives down the cost of health insurance.
Was your organization, the Small Business Chamber, and what is it, New Alliance?
The Small Business for America's Future.
Small Business for America's Future. Would you advocate for universal health care?
What we have always advocated is that the federal government establish the program by which workers, employees, can get subsidized premiums and they can pick the affordable insurance that they want to have for themselves and their family. It is, a lot of my friends were supporters of the Medicare for All, and that's never really gotten anywhere, and is probably as a standalone vote never going to go anywhere. But if anybody's interested in getting to a universal health insurance in this country, the path is through the Affordable Care Act. And because that can be expanded to lead in that direction. If enough people, voluntarily move in that direction and take a public option, and that becomes popular, that's going to have to be expanded. And that's where you start a movement toward universal health insurance that is government-sponsored.
Well, the Trump administration is in court trying to kill the entire act now.
Yes, they are.
Which will throw 20 million people off the insurance rolls, which is absolutely crazy. But let's go to the telephones. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, if you look at history, it is shown clearly that when government gets involved in things, the costs go up. You look at college tuition since the advent of all the subsidies and everything. You look at energy. You look at all these different aspects, healthcare and everything. I don't understand this concept of let's make government more in control of it when they show how much wasteful they are. If Obamacare was so great, why did they have to put fines in to say, if you don't take this, we're going to fine you for not taking it? I don't understand this. I mean, you're just trying to have government control everything. The idea of getting health care and a job is the better job you have, the better health care you're going to have. So that incentivizes you working hard to get a better job. You do this, you're like, okay, it doesn't matter what job you have now. So that decreases the intent for people to work hard. I don't understand this. Government never does anything efficiently. Nothing. So why do you want to give them more control over this? I just don't understand it. Thank you.
Right?
Well, let me just point to Medicare. Let me point to Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
Let me point to Medicaid. Those are very efficient programs for providing health insurance, health care, to people who absolutely need it. Well, 80-some years ago, there was no such thing as Social Security, and it was created. And the Roosevelt administration created it because we were in such dire straits. And, people who were seniors and older people, they had nothing. They would just die because they had no access to health care. So we have done it in this country. We have effectively said health care is really a right of everybody. And you shouldn't have to have the best job in a country to get good health care. That's simply not the way this country is, and I don't believe that most people in this country would believe that. So it's not that government needs to run everything, but there are some things that government does better in the private sector. I mean, look at the premiums of health insurance over the decades have skyrocketed. In fact, in the 2000s, they were going up by double digit every year. And that's why in the 2000s there was a giant chorus of this is not sustainable. We cannot have health insurance premiums go up double digits every year. That's what I was saying. That's what the small businesses that I was talking to were saying. And then we had the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, went really into effect in 2012. And guess what? Those premiums stopped double-digit increases every year. So it's just a matter of economics. The more people you have in the system, paying into the system, the more likely that you will not have as dramatic increases as when there's only a few people paying for health insurance.
All right, we're going to take this call. 30 seconds. We're up against a break. Go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing the government does pretty well is the SNAP program. For those who use it, I don't know how many people use it, but it does pretty good with that to me. I mean, I know it has some failures, it's not perfect, but it does a good thing for a lot of programs. I mean, it does way better than Caller was talking about, that's for sure. All right.
Well, Frank, one of the things government does well is it gives tax benefits to the rich. But one of the things, if you really want to look at what government does well, just look at the interstate highway system we have. Mm-hmm. That was all government during the Eisenhower administration. Yep. And I think corporate tax rates then were like, 80 or 90% or something
they were
like that?
Extremely high.
Yeah, and America prospered during that time, too. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back with more of the urban scene. And, I'm holding you here for about a few more minutes. So, Frank, where are you? What's on the table now?
Well,
I mean, what are you doing as this program to foster better opportunities for small businesses?
Well, we're trying to be good vocal advocates for small businesses in Washington. And the first step is, again, we just launched this new coalition last week, Small Business for America's Future. But we're trying to get the results of this poll out there, trying to communicate that to members of Congress that here are the problems. You're not paying attention to them. Small businesses don't trust you, and you we need to do a better job for small businesses and quit worrying about big corporations of this world. So a lot of it is that type of vocal advocacy and getting to the right people. I mean, with members of Congress, if you get to the right members that are in charge of certain committees, you'd be surprised how much impact you can have just by talking to the right staffer.
Yeah.
And so we will be doing more of that. But what we really need also is more of small businesses and entrepreneurs to sign up. Go to smallbusinessforamericasfuture.org. Sign up to get our information. We do webinars all the time. And town halls, and we send out information about what's going on, how to be involved. So please do that and be a part of this new coalition.
All right, we'll be back in just a few moments with Frank Knapp.
Life's unpredictable. You can't always control what happens, but you can choose who will be with you when it really matters. You can rely on Absolute Total Care to be more than just a healthcare insurance plan. They're your healthcare partner. They'll be here to support you and ensure you get the care you need, no matter what comes your way. Because life is a journey, it's good to know you'll be covered wherever it takes you.
Absolute Total Care. One plan, always covered.
Think your child might have swallowed the wrong medication, gotten into your household products, had a reaction to a bite or a sting? Call the Poison Helpline first for fast, free advice from medical professionals. Call 1-800-222-1222 anytime, anywhere. Save the number. Save a life. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And we're back on the urban scene with Frank Knapp. Let's go to the telephones. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, Mr. Bryson. How y'all doing?
Fine.
It is so awesome to have you guys back. Miss Shirley and I miss y'all desperately.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Could you ask Mr. Frank to give out his number, please?
Okay, what's your telephone number, Frank?
Well, anybody can call me at 803-252-5733.
252-5733. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay.
So, Frank, what's the status of small and minority businesses? Well, minority small businesses, I should say.
We had talked I was just starting to get into it a little bit earlier on, the question about who got the lion's share of the money for the PPP loans. The minority businesses, women-owned businesses, those who are sole proprietors, don't have any actual employees, they were left out. They still haven't gotten much out of the PPP loan process. So I expect to see a lot of minority businesses going under because of this pandemic, because they did not get the financial assistance that they needed because the rules were not written for them.
So how do you come up out of that? I mean, so many small businesses are going under, especially minority businesses. How do they ever start again?
Well, the good news about any entrepreneur, regardless of their minority or women or anybody else, is that they're typically optimists. They typically feel that they can do it if they just had a fair shake. So what we need to do is we need to address what is holding these entrepreneurs back. Why aren't they creating new small businesses? And the answer to that, one of the large answers, is access to capital. For the same reason that these small businesses could not gain access to the PPP loans through their banks is the same reason that they can't get a typical business loan through a bank. They're just not very attractive customers. They're just seen as too risky. They're not asking for a lot of money. I mean, a lot of small businesses that want to get started, a small business owner only needs probably $8,000-9,000 to really try to get going. But where are they going to get $8,000-9,000 when they don't have equity in a house, right?
Yeah.
They're locked out of the system. So we need to come up with a way of making sure that an entrepreneur with a good idea who's willing to work hard can have access to capital. And so our present system isn't working.
You know what's interesting? We just, a lot of people just found out about the Tulsa race riots this weekend in Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of the worst race riots in this country. What happened after the riots? A lot of people, that story is never told, because after the riots, without any help from anybody, because they tried to take the land away from the Tulsa, the members of the Greenwood community who decided to stay. I think it was about 8,000. But they rebuilt the town all over again. Mm-hmm. They built it all over again, and it was prosperous for a number of years. And they basically did it with hardly any outside help. And that's probably impossible today with all the regulations and everything. But do you think organizations like yours, where small businesses will have to become more reliant on small businesses, organizations like the two you head? Well,
what entrepreneurs need is a voice. They need an advocate that can effectively communicate with leaders in Washington what the needs are. And that's what Small Business for America's Future was founded to do. And things can change. I mean, look, we can make changes. Again, go back to the Affordable Care Act. That was a major piece of legislation. Things can change, but we're bucking a system that is being run by deep-pocketed corporations and the wealthy of this country. The ones who are attending Mar-a-Lago down in Florida, right, elbowing with the president. They're running this country as of right now. That needs to change. And fortunately, we have an election come November.
Well, so are you optimistic then, as you look forward to the future, that maybe if this election does change things, you'll be in a better position to advocate for small businesses?
No question about it. I mean, I saw what I was able to do in 2010 when the situation was different. There was more open door policy towards small businesses. There was more legislation introduced to help small businesses back in 2010. So I have seen it with my own eyes. I've experienced it. I've been in Washington and been invited to be a part of press conferences with members of Congress to talk about legislation to help small businesses. So I've been there. And so I hope that those days return where attention focuses on the workers and small businesses, and that we have an opportunity to make some of these fundamental changes that are needed for more people to open up a small business. We have got to help them with access to capital. We've got to reduce health insurance. We've got to get a better shake for small business owners on tax reform. But first thing we have to do is we have to make sure they don't all die out because of this pandemic. We've got to get some financial assistance to them in the form of grants, not loans. So there's a lot going on, but I am optimistic seeing what's going on in this country that we have awoken the rank and file American out there that they want to see change.
All right, Frank, stand by. We'll be back with you in just a minute. We need to take a break.
Hi, This is Councilwoman Dahlia Myers. From Starlight to Screaming Eagle and Old McGraw to Olympia, we're improving our neighborhoods in District 10. From Elgin to Eastover, we're building better infrastructure, and using our school utilities project, we'll see reliable, affordable, high-speed internet in Hopkins, Gadsden, Eastover, and 601 by next year. From Little Camden to Percival Road, we're removing blight, funding new parks, and reviving our neighborhoods. We're District 10, and we're making the most progress. So thank you, Mallet Hill and Hickory Hill, Taylors and Polo Road. Thank you, Eastway Park, Arthurtown, Drexel Lakes, Washington Park, Eastover, Gadsden, Taylors, and Hopkins. 4 years ago, we made promises, and we've delivered. Now I need your support to keep District 10 moving forward. This Tuesday, vote Dahlia Myers for Richland County Council District 10. We're on the move. Ain't no stopping us now.
Paid for by Myers for County Council.
And we're back to wrap up our conversation with Frank Knapp. Frank, so minority-owned businesses, you welcome them into your umbrella of organizations?
Absolutely. Skin color's not important if you're a small business owner. You're there because you believe that you can make a living for your family and your community and help your community. So we welcome everybody, regardless of their demographics. In fact, if you look at one of my co-chairs of Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform, he is the leader of the Urban Chamber of Commerce in Las Vegas, Shundell Newsom. And he's a great guy. And then we just added a new co-chair, Dr. Erica Garcia, who is a doctor in San Antonio, and is a Latina, and she's going to be great. So we want everybody, but we want to make sure that we can help everybody, including minorities, because we need more minority small business owners. So minorities and women's, it's very important that we hear your voices and let us help you.
And once again, give us the phone number if people would like to join the
my phone
organization.
number, please call 803-252-5733. That's my office line here. Just leave a message. I'll get back to you. And then if you'd like to go to smallbusinessforamericasfuture.org, go there. Sign up to get our communications from that and to help us advocate your voice.
All right. Thank you for giving us a call, Frank Knapp. Look forward to talking with you in the future.
This has been great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Urban Scene. I'm Don Frierson. Glad you enjoyed the program. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of the Urban Scene.